you exhausted your questions for the moment?
Now, he's going to come back.
Baroness Coussins.
Thank you. Minister, could you say, please, how the FCDO is planning to track the consequences of the cuts in aid on programme delivery and outcomes, particularly in countries and sectors where the UK has historically played a leading role? And as well as that overarching question, could I ask you to illustrate your answer with particular reference to Colombia, one of the countries that falls within your overall responsibility for Latin America, and which I know you're familiar with, and I think you visited Colombia too. Perhaps you could also say whether it's still going to be a designated priority country. But as you know, in Colombia, where there's ongoing conflict, as well at the same time as a peace process, development is intrinsically linked to peace, security and human rights, and a huge difference can often be made by targeting relatively small grants to grassroots communities. And this is the issue I wanted to raise in particular in relation to Colombia, because the UK embassy there has been playing a really positive role in making sure that that happens, for example, by supporting indigenous communities that have been displaced by the conflict. But there are two problems as far as I can see. One is that the small grants are for 1 year only, and that doesn't encourage sustainability. And two, monitoring reports are required quarterly and in English only, which seems a bit onerous for a 1 year grant and difficult for some communities to comply with. So could I ask you to reassure me that these really valuable small grants, which I'm sure are relevant to countries around the world, not just Colombia, could you reassure me that they won't be regarded as easy, low-hanging fruit to be cut, but rather carefully preserved and enhanced and improved to provide longer-term security over more than 1 year and less onerous and less bureaucratic in terms of the conditions that are applied to them?
I mean, you shouldn't have favourite countries in this job, but Colombia is, well, I know it's not just me either, it's the place you visit and it really gets to you, and it has definitely got to me. I mean, the biggest challenge Colombia faces, as you say, is around security and serious organised crime and the ongoing peace process and the sort of, the fragile nature of that. With penholders at the Security Council, and you've met George Hodgson, our head of mission, who I think is exceptional in the way that he's been able to work with the government in Colombia and build those relationships, work with human rights defenders and, as you say, some of the indigenous communities there. We can't protect all of the bilateral funding. We're working through at the moment exactly how those decisions are going to be made. I'm quite keen that we don't have, this is our favourite country, or we like this, and we don't do it that way, that we have a fair, transparent process by which we make those decisions. We're working through that at the moment. But in all honesty, if you go from 0.5 to 0.3 and you're spending north of $2 billion a year on asylum accommodation via the Home Office, and you're protecting Sudan, Gaza, and the Ukraine and the overseas territories, you don't have a lot to play with. So there is going to be a reduction in some of the programmes that you talked about. But I would say that the biggest contribution that we make in Colombia is around the support that we can do, often through the Home Office. We have a lot of work that goes on with their intelligence and security services, and that's something that you don't need ODA to do. Dan Jarvis, the security minister, has just returned from Colombia. He went to Ecuador and Colombia looking at serious organised crime and what more we can do, recognising that much of the cocaine on the streets of the UK comes via that region. So there's a lot we can still do. ODA isn't everything, and our commitment to Colombia is as strong as it's ever been. But I think that the way that that's expressed, it will be in the future, as it has been up to now as well, is through our strong diplomatic presence and putting really strong teams into Bogota and keeping our focus there. Because I mean, the other thing that just while we're on Colombia, my real worry about this is not our approach, because our approach we're clear about, but it's what approach the Americans now take, because they are funding an awful lot of the security work there, and they've worked with agencies there for a very long time now, and initially it looked like there was going to be a sudden withdrawal of that support. Now that hasn't happened in the way that we feared it might initially, but we're still working through what that's going to look like in the future. There's also elections coming up too, so this it has the potential to be quite a turbulent time in that region, and we need to retain a focus on that. And I mean, it's great to find parliamentarians who are interested in Latin America, so perhaps we could talk more about it as well.
Can I just pick up two further points? One is, you mentioned how will we track the impact. So we will be doing quality impact assessments of the changes to our budgets as they occur. So all our teams will be doing those. We will be collating those and making those publicly available. And the second is, you mentioned a really interesting point that I'm thinking hard about, which is the proportionality of the expectations on our programme and project management, because our system was built for a multi-year, multi-million pounds projects, and as you say, in a world where we're going to have smaller projects working with more local organisations, we need a more sort of agile and simpler system. And I think there's a question, and I'm going to be asking our teams to have a look at this question around proportionality and materiality, and how we make our systems a bit more functional for smaller programmes.